People.
Hi, everybody. We're back. It's another week, and it's Nobody Wants to Work Anymore. Right, that's the name of this show. We're on INN. It's Indie. It's Snow Himbo.
Hey, everybody.
And
how y'all doing?
And yeah, we're here to talk about some more bullshit about work, or not about work, about how people are gaslighting us into saying that we don't want to work, and that how terrible some of these conditions to find work are. So this week, what's been going on? Well, last week we kind of predicted about what was going to happen on the UAW strike, and at this time of recording, it is almost midnight on Thursday night, the 14th, right about the time when UAW said they were going to, at some point, strike. Well, I think what we said was that chances are there wasn't going to be a strike. They were going to make some kind of a deal. There is not a deal right now. And we're going to get into exactly what's happening with the strike and where we were at as of even an hour ago. And by the time this runs on Sunday, it could be all over. So we'll see what happens and see if our predictions are going to be correct there. Himbo's been spending his last 2 weeks because, as we said again last week, the man got a new job using sexy indifference. So
yep,
you now have to figure out what to do with those last 2 weeks at a place you're absolutely miserable. So you put a thing in the chat the other day in our DM thread about how you weren't the only one, right? Giving notice this week, last week.
Oh my god. Okay, so it's been a fucking dumpster fire, y'all. I'm almost at the point where like I'm fighting my own empathy because I'm thinking of like how shitty this is going to be for everybody else working there. And the hard part is like, you know, the workers, the team leads, shit like that, like they're good people. They're cool. They're really cool. You know, I'm always gunning for those people in the fucking suits at the top because they're the people you should be gunning for. So we have a total of 3 people, 2 people who haven't even been there a month, I think, at this point, who quit just very suddenly. You know that weird thing in like Teams or Slack when you just see like an admin person like removing people? I saw that this week. It's just like, fuck, where'd they go? And then their other like top account manager is asking me like where I'm going and asking like, hey, are they hiring? Do they need more? And I'm like, oh my god, they're just leaving the whole ship. So yeah, it's gonna be a rough time, but I'm looking forward to my final week there, and I'm really looking forward to my last day there, because I have a little treat. I'm going to record some of the shit I do. And I'm probably going to need to reenact it. I've been meaning to do a kind of video like that for a while anyway. I don't think I can actually record it because like I'm no legal expert, but you know, I don't want to get myself or anybody else in the hot water. So I'm probably just going to be inspired from my last day to make a video. So we'll probably go over that, but yeah, I'm thinking of some creative ways to, you know, go out with a real bang. I mean, part of me is the depressing thing is that morale is so bad at this company that I'm kind of just hoping like it's gonna stir up enough like lulls that it'll give like a temporary morale boost, because everybody is just, oh my god, it's that standard like the job's hard, it sucks, and you're getting shitty pay. Like most of my jobs have been like, it's hard, it sucks, pays great. And it's like, okay, well, that pays great, balances it out.
Right.
But when you're stuck in a position where the pay shit and then it's got all that other stuff on top, you're just like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watching this can relate, but you know, I call it the Sunday blues, if you will. When like you're so miserable at work that you're just hanging on to every moment of your weekend, like every single one. It's like midnight on Sunday, and you're just like, okay, how can I squeeze out another like 20 more minutes of enjoyment before I gotta wake up and go back to this hell? That's been it's been my life for the last year, and hopefully it isn't. Love having a wooden desk. Hopefully it isn't moving forward, but the only difference is I'll be getting paid good for it. So
Okay.
even if it is a dumpster fire round two, at least I'll be getting paid good. And Jesus Christ, I'm still blown away by the benefits. Like they got like so many crazy perk things that'll actually be beneficial. Like fuck pizza parties, and what was the other one? Like we got ping pong in our office.
Right,
Because
video
like
games.
anyone's ever going to like that performative bullshit. It's like, okay, well, what? Am I gonna go play some like Goldeneye on my break? Or am I gonna have a snack or a coffee and like talk to my significant other or whatever? Nobody's gonna go play Goldeneye for 15 minutes, sir. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way,
And
nobody ever used those fucking games in the office except like during events,
never.
like company like events when nobody was working. That was really the only time I ever saw anybody ever turn one of those machines on. Was like when there was like a big company hangout, like a happy hour type of thing, and then there's a bunch of people in the conference room playing on there. Like, okay. That's what you needed to start like stupid.
It's completely performative. It's always been completely performative. It's just an empty gesture that they can just have sit there. They can probably write off. That it's like it's the whole liberal persona. We're pretending to be a good person and giving grand gestures that ultimately amount to fuck all because we're still going to underpay you. We're going to exploit you, and we're going to work you to the bone to the point where your mental health suffers. That's pretty much kind of like where we're at here. The last office job I have, this is kind of funny. Not only did nobody touch, we had like an Xbox in there.
Right.
Not only did nobody touch the Xbox, but the one time someone actually did play Xbox on their break, there was like a stigma. Like people were weirded out by
Right,
it.
like, oh my god, that guy's playing games. Really? Like that guy's playing games?
I don't
like, yeah, that's why they put it in the goddamn office. And then the one time somebody does play it, they look at him funny. I totally get that. Oh my god. I would have been one of those guys looking at him funny, bro. Yeah.
You know why? Because deep down, everybody knows it's performative. It's just decoration. It's just like there's no weight behind it. It's not saying like go play some video games on your break. It's saying this is a symbol that we're good employers. That's all that fucking means. That's all that's ever meant. The same thing with the pizza parties and all that. It's just little tricks to make you appreciate your employer the same way like an abuser gets you to like it tricks you into thinking like, you know, you'll be lost without them. It's
what about the nap?
See,
I equate it to like Google with the nap pods. Are you really? They're really encouraging you to sleep there, even take a nap for an hour and a half in between meetings. Really? Oh, okay. So I brought
yeah, just a trap for workaholics at best.
I brought this in tribute for you this week. I think you sent this, but I'll be able to come in. Shout out to John Candy, but we'll be coming in on Monday, boss. Yeah. Okay, when are you in? Tuesday. I think that is that Uncle Buck? Is that what that's from? I think that
I don't remember.
I think that might have been from Uncle Buck. Dude, just so great. But that might be what I would do on my last day. Would be to call in. I'd get everything ready on Thursday and be like, guys, I'm not coming in. Fire me.
I might actually, I don't know, because like The thing is, like, I technically start on a Wednesday, so I'm getting like a 4-day weekend, but I'm tempted to like just not. I'm tempted to make it like 5 days off and just be like, yeah, sorry guys, I came down with don't give a fuck 19. I just tested positive. And I'll give them a picture of like a COVID test, and it's just a middle finger. Like I'll PNG that right on there.
Right? Like put the middle finger right where the red line would be. Holy shit, that'd be so funny. So we talk a lot about LinkedIn here.
It's gonna be great.
We talk a lot about LinkedIn. So I found this on Instagram, and I don't know, Instagram, they serve you whatever you watch. So I've been seeing more and more of these, and they're great. So this one's really funny, and I think that we all know people like this. So this is, if you go on LinkedIn.
This is going to be good, y'all.
Let's connect. Each setback is an opportunity for comeback.
Fraud.
Oh, God, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
I endorse you, the person you don't know at all.
No.
That hamster's now my boss.
Good for everybody.
Oh, this is so good. But success comes before work is in the dictionary. Read that again. Oh, dude, that was it. Were you interested in a janitorial position in Nebraska? So good. Open to work. Yeah.
This guy stinks. Huh?
Oh, so good.
That is glorious. Oh my God.
60
And
seconds
it's
through
so
LinkedIn.
true. Like LinkedIn has just become such like it's become such a clown world. Like every time I log in, it's just all this weird, like bizarre behavior. Not to mention, like, I feel like everybody self-censors way too much still. I think moving forward, I'm just gonna like use my LinkedIn account to just call out shitty companies. Just every post is just gonna be a fuck you to that company. Just be like, yeah, this company's shit. This company's shit too. Like, might as well. Or I'll make another LinkedIn Snow Himbo, and I'll just call them all out.
That'll be fun.
Call them out on their shit.
So you said something about that you were going to start messing around, and I remember you said that this was your first note of the week, and I literally was drinking my coffee and really had to work hard to not do a spit take. And I said, oh my God, your CRM administrators are going to kill you, because I was one at one point. That was the first place my head went after laughing at the comment was the CRM. Oh my God, the CRM, because I'm a dork.
Yeah, that went right into the notes tab of Zendesk, y'all.
That's awesome. Did a real big come. I love it. I'm gonna come. I wish I had that on this soundboard now. One other thing I brought here. This is a friend of mine on Facebook that met. He's a lefty, Ethan, and he's also looking for a gig, and it's been really tough. And we found a new fan of the show, so shout out to Ethan if you're watching. Hey, thanks, man. Good to connect. And I asked him for permission to use this here tonight, so we do have his permission, where he posted, job recruiters will call you 3 times a day for a week until the client chooses someone else, and then you can't get a call back at all for a week or two. And that is
or you
pretty
just
much
won't get a call back at all.
pretty much how it is. And that's a lot of fun. So we know that's going on. And then this, speaking of nobody wants to work anymore, I was reading this thread of somebody that I know on LinkedIn, and certainly right in the middle of the thread, you've got to have, there's always one. We have a problem with people who want to work. this is literally another version of nobody wants to work anymore. And then they literally use this whole nobody wants to work anymore. There's a whole graphic that clipping headlines going back to the early 1900s. Every few years, somebody always posts, one of these mainstream corporate papers always posts about nobody wants to work anymore. But this image makes me laugh because people have been saying that for years. Personally, I don't think the problem is people don't want to work, but people have been burned by employers who want their employees to do $1 million job with minimum wage pay and benefits. Yes.
Yep.
Now, the guys that put, yeah, it's now the reason why, and I will say that Kyle, who posted this originally, I know Kyle. So Kyle had put up that for the first time, 4 different companies have contacted him about people needing to fill positions. And he said it's in finance and sales and across the board. And I've never had that many companies come to me. It's like, how come they can't fill these positions? I can tell you. So
it's not because here's the funny thing. It's capitalists are always and their enablers are always going to be like, well, it's because people are lazy, blah blah blah. I'm going to be the first one to say this to everybody. Okay, if you're getting paid poverty wages and work to the bone, you're allowed to be lazy. I'm tired of people feeling like, oh, I don't want to be perceived as lazy. You know what? If I'm putting 8 hours of my day, possibly more, of my life, which is not infinite, into making some other fucker money, you know what? I don't care if I'm lazy or not. If I'm putting the majority of my waking hours into working a job, and at the end of the week, I'm still worrying about financial shit, suddenly, I don't really give a fuck about work ethic. I'm sorry. Because the problem is I'm being exploited to begin with. So everybody's got to drop this attitude where it's like, oh my God, like, I don't want to be perceived as lazy. It's not lazy. Don't even use that word anymore. Flip it around. Be like, I don't have any incentive. I'm not motivated.
That's
Shit
literally,
like that.
it's so funny you say that, because I was having a conversation with Reef, our buddy Reef Breland over at Indie News Network, INN. Go check him out. Just like a half an hour ago, right before we started recording this. And I said, I almost feel like it's Office Space. And I'm like, we should almost change the name of the show to Office Space, because I don't know, man. I think that the censors might come get, the copyright. We had a whole argument about that, but literally, I mean, that's what this reminds me of. While you're saying that, I'm thinking Office Space, and just the scene where Peter's like, yeah, I'd do more, but you guys just aren't like that. You're literally Peter now, and I love it.
Yep,
you're talking to the Bobs,
pretty much.
I did want to shout out
and
that
this is someone.
Go ahead.
And this is someone who's been a workaholic for many, many years, always gave it 200%, always stayed late, always hyper-focused on, the task at hand and going above and beyond. I'll be the first one to admit that part of that was because subconsciously I was like, man, this is so much dopamine. Just keep fucking going. This is great. But that's a whole other conversation. But I will say that this is coming from a workaholic who finally, in my 30s, I realized, you know what? Doesn't matter how hard you work. They're going to exploit you. You got to set your boundaries, and you got to say, you know what? I'm not going to be this like cog in the company that you guys can milk for all these extra profits. Okay? I'm thinking about me, and everybody else
not without paying for it.
Stance. No. Yeah, man. If you want to pay me $200K a year, yeah, I'll do whatever. I will do whatever.
You see, everybody's got a price. Everybody's got a price, like the $1 Million Man used to say when I was a kid. This person did also point out how Kyle and Paul who run a company called Automotive State of the Union. It's an ad agency. They also do other cool stuff. But they also made a TV show. It almost kind of like us, only a whole lot more professional and like a real agency production. They decided that they were going to create a TV show called More Than Cars. I'm a big fan of these guys. And what More Than Cars is, they've only had a couple episodes, but they're trying to showcase that there are actually people in the automotive industry that work in dealerships and spotlight their journeys, how they ended up working there, why they continue to work there, what they think is great about it, some of the challenges. And it's PR for people who work in car dealerships, because there is this awful stigma about a car salesman, but there's all different roles of people that work in the car dealership that end up getting this awful stigma because of the people that they deal with in the service department at times that can be rough, or tell them that they have to have an expensive part replaced, or an expensive servicing that may be more than they have. And then you deal with the traditional reputation of car salespeople. So I really like what these guys do, because they really do believe in the people. Sounds corny as it may sound, I've met these guys personally, and they're not bad dudes, and they're capitalists. Well, no problem saying that they are capitalists. They're certainly in it to earn some cash, and that's okay, sort of. But they also do a lot to give back to the people, and they are focused not just on profit, but what they realize is that if you focus on people and experience, the money comes. So that was my little soapbox on the nobody wants to work anymore thing. Now, we also have this fucking guy. All right. The Gurner Group.
I'm just gonna preface this by saying this is not a real person. This is a fucking lizard. Okay, you can even see that's obviously, like, he's not even proportioned properly. That is a lizard in human skin. Do not think this is a human being. That motherfucker.
People were making fun of him, calling him a conehead.
That motherfucker is not real.
That motherfucker is not real. Dude, the chick on the plane.
That's who she was talking about. He was trying to talk her up on a plane. That's the guy. So, I'm convinced.
This is a 1 minute and 11-second clip in which he says that the workers have become arrogant since COVID, and we've got to kill that attitude. Now, this is more in the work from home stuff that we've been talking about, but check this out.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years. And we need to see that change. We need to see
because productivity is in an all-time high, right?
40-50%, in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude.
Yeah, they do work for the employer, but you know what? They're the ones that generate wealth for the employer. You fucking parasite. You fucking leech. I swear to God, if this doesn't make you immediately Google DIY guillotine, I don't know what will. Because Jesus fucking Christ.
There's another 20 seconds.
This whole attitude.
Are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think
you want to increase unemployment. I mean,
there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People
normality.
Might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less.
Over 100,000 workers in tech this year.
Because that will cascade across the cost balance.
Okay, so this guy, this asshole. So what this asshole is, he's got to be some kind of a VC guy. Now, I've actually been reading about this a little bit on LinkedIn from some of the people that are revenue experts. And what they've been talking about with this asshole is that they decided during pandemic that things were going to go up on an upward trajectory and never have a downward, any kind of downward tick. So as things continued to get
Right.
better and momentum came out of COVID, they did not, they overhired and overpaid while they were overhiring because there was a market glut of employees in the spring and summer of 2022. Then everybody realized, oh shit, I can go get a new job for a whole lot more money, a higher base salary, a higher OTE. And then the hammer came down because the financiers realized, oh, we're not going to make the sales that we're going to make, which means that we have to figure out a way to cut back on the pay plans, which means that people aren't going to be making a quota as much and living off of salary. And oh shit, they're making too much salary. We've got to start laying people off because we got to shed salary and overhead. That is the spiral that he's talking about, but he's blaming it on the employees, not on the decision makers that overhired and decided to overpay for the overhires. That was not the fault of the employees.
For those people.
On top of the fact that, these guys are going to be just fine. If something happens tomorrow to the company, they have no qualms about walking away and cutting you, but are expecting you to dedicate all of your time in your life to an asshole like this. In the end. Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy bad.
That's what pisses me off about capitalist cultists when they talk about like a system more like the workers own the means of production. They're just like, so should the workers also take all the losses when the company fails? And I'm like, holy fuck. Do you guys not understand that's exactly what layoffs are? That's
right.
Literally what they are.
Well,
Someone
while the
loses
CEO
ability
gets
to put
paid
food on the table. Yeah, well, the CEO is just fine. And you're sitting here and you're like, won't somebody please think of the rich people? Like, oh my God. We're so fucked. We're so propagandized.
Well, what you also saw was that during pandemic, a lot of these big CEOs, I cut my salary down to $1 a year. Yes, but you still had stock options and you were still making millions for the last 3 or 4 years. It ain't like your family's going to be hurting. Now, nobody, these guys all do set themselves up with big overhead and big costs, but they also have huge, massive reserves and massive retirement plans on top of it, 401ks and IRAs that they never even touch. That's untouchable. They won't even consider dipping into that ever. Okay, paying the penalty that's required. Most people, don't even have one, but if they do, quite often they're having to dip into that while they're on unemployment to just maintain themselves. And you've seen that quite a bit.
Meanwhile, the majority of people in North America, if they miss one paycheck, they're fucked. One emergency, they're fucked. So yeah, you can virtue signal all you like about how you reduced the amount of money you're bringing in, but you're still sitting there living comfortably, never having to worry about being late on a bill, never having to worry about like, how am I going to make rent this month? Never having to worry about like, for example, having a talk of like, oh my God, what if one of our pets gets sick? Well, we'll never be able to afford the vet bill, so we're just going to have to put him down. Which are real conversations that happen in real working class families. I know, because I've had them myself.
Yeah.
So they're sitting up there saying, we're sacrificing so much. They're still living 100 times better than you. They wipe their ass with the finest prosciutto in the deli aisle.
Yes,
Ew.
they certainly do. And it's very thinly sliced.
That's not a... So I'm really sorry for that visual, y'all, because I personally love prosciutto.
Okay,
ew.
so I wanted to start getting into... Wow. That's a transition. So we were talking earlier a little bit about the UAW and what's been happening with that 97% of the members authorized a strike. We've been predicting that the members, that the union would not go on strike across the board, that they would not put 150,000 members out on strike and give them all $500 a week strike pay. So in the lead up to this, well, actually, you know what? Before we do that, I want to start by showing the tweets that I have made over the last few weeks that show the receipts to show that, A, we've known for weeks that UAW president Sean Fain was having weekly or more frequent talks with Joe Biden, and that workers need to prepare to get screwed, then gaslit the corporate media, telling everyone that it was a record-breaking win for workers. And this is based upon what happened to the UAW and the UPS and the Teamsters a couple weeks ago. All right. Then I noted that this could be also seen as a shot across the bow at UAW. Now, what had happened was the Biden administration announced that they were going to potentially offer an EV contract to the Hyundai plant in Alabama, which would have thereby been shooting revenue in the end back to Korea, where Hyundai's parent resides. And there would have been a huge outcry and uproar from the Michigan senators, which I believe are Democratic. I could be wrong. There was no way that was going to happen. So I indicated that it could be seen as a shot across the bow at UAW leadership and a clear message to the big three to get something done, but it's not looking good for the workers. Then we said, okay, that we've seen this one before because it's literally the exact same playbook that the Teamsters did, right? So 97%, remember, of UPS Teamsters had voted to authorize a strike. Did we get a strike? No, we did not. So this was on August 26th, and I tagged and I said, hey, Fight Back News, I got a question. What's the historical context here? It looks like we're being set up just like UPS Teamsters. Is the union leadership going to sell out? And if they got a 30% wage increase, but then keep the 40-hour work week, which is one of the things that they were trying to do, is cut down to a 32-hour work week, so people only have to work 4 days instead of 5. Everyone's going to run around like that's a win. A 30% wage increase over the life of a contract, right? That's not a huge win. Then we saw in WSWS, World Socialist website, they have been very skeptical of union leadership, rightfully so. Okay, saying that was in today's episode, today's issue by Jerry White, who we have issues with at times, but this was actually a really good article, and that he's adopted a militant pose to forestall an all-out rebellion by rank-and-file workers over decades of union-backed concessionary agreements. He's in discussions with the Biden admin and the auto executives over how to force workers to pay the cost of the transition to electric vehicles. So we started to see this even at the end of August. And there's the article. I tweeted that out, and I asked Misty, who was looking for stories to cover that day, well, maybe the UAW is preparing to fuck over 150,000 workers at the big three plants. Might be the story you might want to cover today. I don't know if she did. And then I reminded people, because I remembered back that we've been covering labor and UAW and strikes, and how do we miss that for quite a while? 2 years ago almost, John Deere and the UAW announced a 97% authorizing strike action. Did the workers go on strike? I believe they did, but at the same time, they called the UAW criminal scumbags. Yes, that was what the John Deere UAW members called their union leadership after the deal was signed. Criminal scumbags for selling them out. So I was reminding people of that. And then Sabby was talking about unions because Ryan Grimm decided that he wanted to chime in on how great unions were and all that unions have done for us. But meanwhile, I wanted to point out, Sabby pointed out, that privileged people are holding the left back, that homelessness is up, and we've got a housing crisis, grocery prices increasing weekly, and this motherfucker is stuck on the answer of unions. I support unions, but that should never be the end game. What about disabled people? Yes, Sabby, yes to all of those things, right? So I have to chime in, and I said, not only that, but 90% of the country doesn't work in a union. But even the ones who do have issues, ask a UPS part-timer. We talked about Luigi Morris, or a John Deere UAW worker, or an Amazon warehouse employee at JFK 8, how much they love their union. Ryan, of course, is virtue signaling and doing the bidding of his bosses at the Intercept and Breaking Points. But then I'm in the UAW and it's fucking trash. We've got people replying. And then this person saying, I think the new UAW leadership is the only good sign I've seen in a different direction. Why? Because they've been believing the media. I think most Americans can't even conceptualize the idea of a co-op mainly because of propaganda. Because what we're saying is owning the means of production through a worker-owned co-op. So many think unions are at least a start in the right direction, except that that's not a start. They've been around for close to 100 years. Right? And somebody else was like, that's ridiculous. And here's someone else, another friend of the network. When I worked for the UFCW and Kroger years ago, my own union rep told me about stuff I specifically can't do right in front of my own managers. He was nowhere near the top of the union, so I think that what we're seeing is a symptom of what's already been going on, is that the people in the middle are getting edicts from the top and telling their employees that if you want to keep your union job, you better follow the line. That's what I see happening here.
And I just like to make a little bit of a disclaimer here, because I feel like this needs to be said.
Go ahead.
Obviously, as a Marxist, I'm always going to support unions. Obviously, no fucking shit. But people need to understand that capitalists aren't blissfully unaware that unions exist, okay? I mean, shit, look at all of the union busting activities. That is just part of today's life. But they're also not stupid. And a lot of these unions are probably influenced by moneyed interests. And that's something that we need to get better at calling out without having that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, they criticize unions. That means they're anti-union. They're for the capitalists. We need to stop this toddler brain thinking. I know a lot of it is probably just op accounts and like people who are trying to force us into a black and white thing. But seriously, I mean, unions aren't magically immune to corruption or influence. And I think the only way to get towards a more pro-worker society is everybody, left, right, whatever, everybody needs to get much better at calling out when unions are fucking up and when there's corruption in unions and all this, because these things are very real and they do happen. And we're never going to get better unions unless we are critical of these things. It's like everything else. Like if you want a better system here, you need to be critical of the current system. That doesn't mean you're against the system. If I buy a car and the car breaks down within 20 minutes of me driving it out of the dealership, and then it blows up and I get eaten by a velociraptor, what was I talking about again? No, I'm kidding. My point is, like, if I buy a car exactly. If I buy a car and it breaks down 20 minutes after getting out of the dealership, and I have a problem with that, and I say it's a shitty car, that doesn't mean I'm against cars. That doesn't mean I'm anti-car. It just means that I'm calling out a problem within the car sphere of discussion. Okay, so people need to understand in 2023, there are some problems with unions, and we need to start talking about them if we want better unions. Rant off. /thread or whatever.
The gaslight is happening in real time because I literally just had an alert come across my phone. United Auto Workers comes from the Washington Post, who of course is one of the media arms of the Democratic Party primarily, but the establishment, the left wing of the establishment that's narrative managing and setting all this stuff about Ukraine and saying that Joe Biden is just star-spangled dandy. United Auto Workers Union launches historic strike at 3 plants as contracts with Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis expire. Now, before we get to that, and that is literally the gaslight happening in real time, because 3 plants, and we're going to talk about which 3 plants, why, and how historic this really is. Let's also concede and acknowledge the fact that, and this published 2 days ago, automakers hand billions to shareholders while stiffing workers. They have authorized $5 billion in stock buybacks over the past year. This was also one of the big contentions at UPS, was that UPS had done, I believe, over $8 billion in stock buybacks since pandemic had started. And these are profits that are artificially or not so artificially increasing and inflating the existing shares in the market by removing existing shares from the market, thereby reducing the availability and potentially increasing the value of each one. It is designed completely to help the shareholders and the capitalists and to screw over the workers and to not have their shares diluted to increase the stock price. And who does that benefit? The shareholders and the executives primarily. So
I'm
Matthew
sorry,
Cunningham,
when you first sent me this, as we were talking about earlier, to me at least, it just feels like a power move. This just feels like a giant middle finger to the working class. It's almost like a remind them of their place sort of move. Because obviously nobody's going to be happy with this, but it's like, no, we're going to do this. And we know they're going to report about it a lot, but we're just reminding them that they have no power and we have all the power. Because like, I can't see another like framing other than like just outright like demoralization attempt at this, because Jesus fucking Christ. Sorry, continue.
It is literally the owner class giving themselves a raise on the backs of the working class. Okay, because as their share values increase, right, and they're not giving raises or keeping up with inflation and cost of living, and then on top of that, rewarding increased productivity. Yes, productivity is at an all-time high. According to this, $21 billion in profits just in the first 6 months of 2023 between the big three automakers. Now, again, that's three big companies, GM, Ford, and Stellantis. Those are along the lines and along the same numbers as UPS, who had earned $100 billion in profits since pandemic had started. I think that and that's one company versus three, you have a lot more competition in the automotive space. They also make, the big three make tanks, they make military vehicles, they make commercial equipment, whatever. And that UAW would threaten our ability to do what's right long-term for the benefit of the team, but the UAW were greedy. $5 billion in stock buybacks. So that was 2 days ago as part of its efforts to force the auto companies to spend more on their workers. Like it says, UAW is taking aim at the corporation stock buyback approach, which is great. And these guys, by the way, The Lever, founded by David Sirota, not a huge fan of David Sirota. Some of the people here I do like. Matthew Cunningham Cook happens to be a good writer. Andrew Perez, good writer. Julia Rock, she's a good writer there too. But our union proposed enhanced profit sharing formula that would provide workers $2 for every million spent by Ford on stock buybacks, special dividends, and $2 for workers for a million. That seems proportionate.
And I'd just like to remind everybody that like these people would not have a roof over their heads. They would have no food to put on their table if it weren't for the surplus value that they are enjoying from the labor of those workers. Okay? They wouldn't have anything. They're not the ones digging up the rocks in the earth. They're not the ones making the sandwiches. They're not the ones out there catching the Alaskan king crabs. They're just sitting on their asses, right?
Yep.
And So
again, until 1982, the U.S. had banned stock buybacks because it was literally considered market manipulation. And then all of a sudden, Reagan deregulates the market, and now it's a regular thing. For the automakers, the latest buybacks reflect an even stronger commitment to speculative payoffs for their shareholders. Like I said, they spent $484 million on stock buybacks last year. Imagine if they put that kind of money into employees, into helping attracting better talent, paying people better, training people more, and investing in American workers. Amazing.
Spoiler alert, this is the funniest thing about all this.
They'd be
Spoiler
more
alert,
profitable.
if they did all of that, yes, exactly. Thank you. You caught what I was throwing. Their profits would go through the fucking roof. And there's many studies on this. You can look them up yourself. I'll go ahead and post a couple of them later on, I think. But like, if they just like didn't adopt this whole getting blood from a stone shit that they're on, like and they have been on for a while now, they would have met their prime aims and exceeded their prime aims anyway. Such is the hubris of the capitalist class, I suppose. I don't really know why, but like, if they just invested, oh my God. And I saw that in one of our last companies too, because we did that. We made it worker first, and our profits went through the roof. And then we had an acquisition, and then the new owners came in. They're like, nah, we like the whole, like, let's like nickel and dime and like exploit the people that are actually doing all the fucking work, and let's just do that. And not only did they lose their 3 biggest clients in record time, but most of the people quit. And as of this moment, they are not in a good position. But that's just kind of how people roll. That's how capitalists roll in general. They just they have to stick to that formula, even when they're shown time and time over that there is a better formula to follow. They have to stick to that one. So,
yeah, I mean,
what are you going to do except eventually revolution?
Well,
revolutions.
Maybe if we're lucky, but we're talking. This also talks about the rise in stock buybacks and declining of organized labor, which are intricately linked. Right, that because the profits started flowing directly to the top starting in the 1980s, and all the productivity basically has kept up, but the money has flatlined. And a lot of that is that they were funneling it out the back door so that it wasn't built into the company profits at all when they were profit sharing with their employees, because they were too busy buying back the stock with those profits to be able to artificially inflate the stock price so only the wealthiest owners would benefit. But what they're talking about again was that after the 2008 financial crisis, GM filed for bankruptcy in 2009, the biggest manufacturing collapse in U.S. history, and we bailed them out, right? But then, and it had bought back $20 billion worth of stock over that time in the 80s and 90s. But then, and it stopped in about 2016. They started last year. But because these companies were too big to fail, the U.S. spent $11 billion to bail out GM. Now, in the end, GM paid back a lot of that money. Mm-hmm. Right. They agreed to that. 21,000 layoffs, a wage freeze for workers, a tiered wage system for new workers, a no-strike agreement until 2015, which they got the union to sign off on, and the transfer of retirees' healthcare and benefit costs from GM to the UAW. That was unbelievable. Yes, the UAW is paying the pensions of the former GM workers that the GM workers had profited, but the UAW is the one paying the pensions because GM couldn't afford to pay it. And it was either you guys pay it or everybody's getting zero. Union's still fighting to regain the ground they lost from these concessions. Nobody even talks about that. I'm glad they did. I said nobody, except that Matthew covered it. In 1986, they employed nearly 900,000 people, and today they only have 167,000. And they only had four brands then. 5. They had Chevrolet, they had Oldsmobile, they had Buick, they had Cadillac, and they had GMC. Those were their 5 brands. Now you have 4 brands, I believe. You've got Chevrolet, GMC, Buick, and Cadillac. Oldsmobile doesn't exist anymore. They had Pontiac, they got rid of Pontiac. They had Saab, they got rid of Saab in 2009. They had to shed brands. I was surprised that Pontiac stayed and not Buick. I thought they would have gotten rid of Buick instead of Pontiac. But and what a resurgence Buick got as a result. But anyway, They were talking about that UAW had 1.2 million members in 1982 when the buybacks were first legalized. Now there's only 380,000. Now, also, what happened was an infusion of foreign cars, specifically Japanese made, but also BMW, Audi, Mercedes-Benz weren't selling nearly the number of cars in the United States that they were in 1982. I mean, you saw a tremendous amount of foreign. Toyota barely existed in 1982. So I would also say that because of the plants for Hyundai and Toyota and all of these other manufacturers that have come in and gone into non-union states like Nissan and BMW. Nissan went into Tennessee, BMW went into South Carolina, and these are all right-to-work states. So all the potential members that could be UAW members that work for other car manufacturers are not UAW members. So that's a little bit of a skew there, honestly. And maybe because they're not automotive people, they don't know that. I know my car history because I came from the car business. But the recent buyback spree comes on top of extraordinary dividend payments made by the big three over the past year. So Ford, unprecedented $2.6 billion special dividend in February. A special dividend is a one-time payout to all of its shareholders of whatever that money is, outside, in addition to the quarterly dividend that goes out. There you go, on top of its quarterly dividend of $600 million. All right, that's because they're sitting on so much cash, and they don't want to give it away to their employees. They're going to give it away to the people that invested and give that back as a dividend. All told, they spent over $4.3 billion on dividends. I mean, just the numbers are exorbitant. All right,
it's literally just all a bunch of vultures just surround a carcass, and the carcass is the working class. I hate it here.
Yeah, we'll link this article in the description, but while the big three executives and shareholders got rich, UAW members got left behind, Sean Fain said in a video update to members last week. Great, that's awesome messaging. A newly hired auto worker at the big three today makes less than what they made in 2007 when you account for inflation. Meanwhile, car sales are down while big profits are way up. And that also is part of the strategy, by the way, of the automakers, is they got to right size their inventory and their production thanks to pandemic. It's one of the things that happened in the Great Reset was you don't see massive inventories and massive volumes of vehicles sitting on lots anymore. I'll famously say that for basically since I started doing this, I have been trying to buy at least a new Toyota Sienna for my family. We leased one back in, it was 2019, 2018, 2018, 2019. I had to buy that car out when the lease ended because there were literally no Siennas available on any lot at any Toyota dealer anywhere around the United States. And if you wanted to get one, you had to place an order for one that hadn't even produced yet at the factory in Japan, and wait months for it to ship over here on a boat, assemble at a plant in Kentucky, and then be delivered to your dealership where you were going to pay thousands over sticker price and a ridiculous lease rate. They were talking about leasing Toyota Siennas that go for $500 a month for over $1,000 a month. People were paying it. Because they kept the demand so high that people were literally fighting each other in the dealerships over these cars because they needed that car for their family. Gross. All right. So we talk about stock buybacks. Today, the UAW announced at noon today, 12:51, incredible, right up to our contract deadline, Stellantis just can't help themselves, announcing that they're executing another $500 million in stock buybacks. If they've got money for Wall Street, they sure as hell have money for the workers who make this industry run. Hashtag stand up UAW. Hell yeah. Yeah, great. Boom. Now, the other day, I'm reading Labor Rag Payday Report. I like Mike Elk from Payday Report. Shout out to Mike. He is an independent, and he covers workers organizing. He's covered the SAG-AFTRA strike, gone out to the picket line to talk to workers. Get this in my inbox. and I noted the language, and I was like, oh, shit. First of all, Strike Buster Bernie is now showing up at a rally with the union. Anytime they send Bernie in, it's over. And I've been saying that for 2 years, and nobody wants to listen. But whenever they send Bernie in, Bernie is there to be the uncle, to put his arm around your shoulder, to go, well, we really tried, but this is what's best for the country, son. And that's what I feel like Bernie's role has been with big labor. Because they love him.
That's what Bernie's role's been from. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be the one to say, I'll just rip the Band-Aid off. People can get triggered, whatever. I'll laugh at you if you do. That's been Bernie's role from day one. I'm sorry. Like, it's just, this is like, if people don't see the writing on the wall from by now, like, I don't know what to tell them. I don't know how to help these people.
Now, this is tomorrow morning. They're supposed to be having this rally in Detroit. This will help the UAW rally public support as it appears very likely, in quotes, that the union will strike this week. When I saw very likely, I knew that it was never going to happen. Not the way that they say that it was going to happen. So then we have flowery language.
Because you never...
Why would they say that?
You never put that out there. Why would you ever say very likely? Like, if you're in a conversation and it's like, are you coming to the party? If you're introvert like myself and you're like, yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's quite possible. Anything other than just, yes, I will be there, you're essentially signaling, there's a chance that it's going to be a no, but I can also kind of get out of it because I'm going to show interest. That's all this is. It wouldn't be very likely. It would be a fucking yes if this was going to be a definitive, like, move forward action.
Right. And then, so this is the article that it was in an online town hall. He said the union would engage in a series of targeted strikes at certain employers. Yeah, that was yesterday. And I'm like, oh, this is bad. This is bad. Instead of striking at all three at the same time, the UAW will instead target specific locals. The union said it would begin informing UAW locals of when they will go on strike tonight at 10 p.m. Again, this is Thursday night that we're recording. This is going to create confusion for the companies. It's going to keep them guessing what might happen next. He's playing 3D checkers, right? We're going to hit him we're going to hit where we need to hit. And where we need to hit, we're going to hit to move mountains. Very tough kind of flowery language, right? So somebody sees this and says, okay, Sean, we wanted to stand up. You back down. Strategic strike will not work. This is a game that you're playing with our lives. Here in Indiana, if you wanted to hurt the GM pocketbook, you'd shut down the Fort Wayne assembly plant, not the Marion stamping plant, where they, by the way, have been stockpiling inventory to expect that the workers were going to go on strike to not impact GM, would you believe? All right. This is a bunch of BS and you know it. Stop acting like you care about auto workers' families. You're just as bad as the big three, maybe worse. At least with them, we know that they're about profits. Right. Right. So Fort Wayne has been down multiple times. They were just down the other week. GM stopped production multiple times this year due to too much supply. GM moneymakers are Flint, Arlington, Kentucky, Fort Wayne. All right. The HD plant in Arlington should be no-brainers, right? So somebody else deleted that post and said that we're still waiting on our unemployment from the shutdown in April. Isn't that nice? So Mariah Bigelow, thank you, Mariah, for being publicly and speaking out publicly against this. On top of the fact that they're pointing out the CEO compensation has grown almost 1,000% since 1978. Well, of course, we know that wages have basically been stagnant. So tonight, showing up in my inbox, UAW to only strike at 3 non-strategic plants.
Fuck.
Wait, what? Thanks, Sean.
Goofball.
A few minutes ago,
Galaxy.
A few minutes ago, UAW President Shawn Fain announced the union would only strike at 3 non-strategic plants beginning tonight. Tonight, for the first time in history, we will strike all 3 of the big 3 at once. if you don't see that this is a media sell job being presented that they're going to end up selling as a historic contract because they signed it with all three automakers when they've never done that simultaneously before, ask yourself, years from now, when this agreement expires and we have the brinksmanship coming up to the fact again that all three are going to expire simultaneously, do you think this is going to be used for workers or against workers? Jesus Christ. Instead of striking at strategic parts markers that could force multiple plants to shut down, the UAW decided to strike at 3 plants that make some of the least popular cars in each of the big 3 chain. The Toledo Jeep Wrangler final assembly plant, the Michigan assembly plant, which makes Broncos and Rangers, and the Wentzville, Missouri plant, which nobody was talking about, which makes Broncos and second-tier trucks. But that can't be right. GM doesn't make Broncos. Ford makes Broncos. They meant a different. They meant I can't think of the Canyons maybe, or one of the smaller pickup. With the union striking plants of little strategic significance to begin, it's unclear if the UAW will move to strike at more strategic plants that make auto parts used by multiple plants. I think what they're trying to do is, again, send a shot across the bow. Say, look, we'll strike at these unnecessary plants. Make our deal. Concede to our wishes and, be ashamed if some of those other things happen. Because it's up to you if you want to make it happen. They're just slow rolling this. But it is unclear why the UAW decided not to target more strategic plants. The Biden administration has applied enormous pressure to both the union and the automakers to settle the deal, which we've been documenting here. Again, shout out to Mike Elk for covering this at Payday Report. We covered all the things that I had talked about with this. Stay tuned. Our solidarity is with the union and plant workers, the rank and file workers that are going to get screwed over here. That is my feeling that, and it's the writing is on the wall that these guys are going to get shafted. That Sean Fain will be just fine. My feeling is also that they don't want to strike 150,000 employees for multiple reasons. They don't want to impact. Look, that hurts a lot of the employees that can't afford to live on strike pay of $500 a week. They don't want to have to put 150,000 people on $500 a week. They make a whole lot more than that right now. That's going to be a big problem, even at strike level pay. I think that this is brinksmanship, but they've already now set a red line, allowed GM to cross it, and are now making a new red line. And when that happens, your negotiation power is completely out the window. If they had shut down all 150,000 and GM can't, and all three automakers can't operate until they turn back on, that would have been the most powerful move. And I think it could have happened by the end of this weekend at the latest. Because the minute that money train stops rolling in, all the executives then are fearing for their jobs. And right now, the executives are not fearing for their jobs. And when you have management and executives not fearing for their jobs, but these guys willing to put their jobs on the line and go on strike, management's gonna hold out. That's what we see with SAG-AFTRA happening too, unfortunately.
A great litmus test I use personally is that I just ask myself, does this threaten capital? And if the answer is no, then I'm like, okay, well, what's going to threaten capital? Because at the end of the day, that's what you need to be thinking about. And if you're seeing these largely performative actions that don't actually threaten capital, then what the fuck are we doing?
I mean,
and that's something we should all be asking.
I mean, Sean Fain,
right?
Came in with this last year as, I'm a man of the people. Your previous leadership were literally criminal and they went to jail. And I came from the rank and file. Now there's a guy by the name of Will Lehman who also ran for UAW president against Sean O'Brien and lost. He was supported by the World Socialist website. And I think he only got about 25% of the vote. from the rank and file. He did not have a lot of the support from the union leadership and leadership and executives, and still got a substantial portion of the vote because people were so upset with the current leadership structure. I also wanted to mention one other thing about unions. You were talking about how you're a big believer and supporter in unions, but that they're capitalistic in nature. Also, that they are top down and mimic a corporate structure in many ways, so that you have a situation where the people at the top could potentially be paid a substantial amount more than the people at the bottom, if at all, if the people at the bottom are getting paid at all, which will further create resentment. And remember, there's no war but class war.
Yep.
Sean Fain has been making a lot of blustery statements about executives and billionaires, but what he hasn't been talking about are the middle managers that are making $500,000 a year to $1 million a year, that are also part of the problem in keeping the workers down. There's a whole lot more of them, first of all, than the CEO who makes $20 million, Mary Barra.
That's their whole job. That's their purpose. Is pacifying the workers.
Well,
That's
and
like
making sure that the vehicles get produced and that they're safe and that they have the right parts that are in the right places at the right times. There's logistics and things that have to be moved, and you've got executives that then shuffle around paperwork, phone calls. They have to manage IT teams and customer service. And look, that executives also, the people management is not an easy job. It's exhausting. And honestly, I prefer being out in sales than managing people. I would rather talk with people and try to convince people why they should be buying our solution, or why what we have is going to help their lives, and actually do things to help people's lives, versus doing what some executive decided on a sheet because some executive above them decided that this is what they want people to do because X, Y, Z. And usually, guess what? That starts with a sale. That starts with that somebody at the company sold something to somebody else at the other company that we haven't produced yet. And we've got to figure out how the fuck to get from point A to point B. And that's what these people help us do. But they do that on the backs of the workers, and then they don't want to pay when they make the profits. And that's disgusting.
And by the way, guys, just so y'all know, my takes aren't coming from an assumption. I've actually managed people for many years now. And in every single role I've had, from the top down, part of my job has been getting workers to feel way better about essentially getting screwed. That's at least been part of every job I've had managing people. When they complain about compensation, you have to have a conversation about that. You have to, you have to produce a result for your boss. When they're complaining about not advancing, or that there's too much of a workload, or that they're not hitting their numbers because their numbers aren't realistic. Well, all of their metrics, KPIs, whatever you call them, are tied into productivity and ultimately profit. So,
but it's not tied to productivity. It's just to profit, because what they do is they artificially reduce their profits by buying back the stock. And they artificially increase the stock price again, which only helps the shareholders. All right. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. We got a little bit of time left tonight, about 25, 30 minutes. I did want to showcase, because tonight, and I got a reminder, funny enough, I've been on Facebook with my Indie Left account, facebook.com/indie.left, I believe is where you find me there. My personal account as Indie. And it reminded me that 1 year ago today, INN, and this was led by Colin and I primarily, but there was a huge collaborative effort that also included Chris Legion, and it included Joe, Shut the Fuck Up, Shitlib 3 now. We love Joe. And Reef, Colin, me, Lucy from Blue Moon Red Wine, Chris Legion contributed to some of this. This was a real INN team effort, and I'm so proud of this. I really am. Even to this day, I still have been sharing this. I still feel this is tremendously relevant. And this is about workers, and this is about unions, and I figured this would be a perfect forum to bring this in and talk about some of the things. This is, look, guys, it took us more than a month to write this article. And the timeline is that we had been watching, and I'll just read the first paragraph, and we can watch one of the videos maybe that Joe made. I don't know if you've seen these videos, Himbo. Did you watch either of these? Because I put them on Twitter today.
I have not, but I've had a really busy day.
Okay, so what I want to say here, though, is that we admire him, his tenacity, his care for the health and safety of the workers at JFK 8, and for the relentlessness that he sustained for more than 2 years as he became a national figure, which he clearly never sought out. Again, we wrote this a year ago. We published this a year ago after observing what had been happening for the 2 years that they won their union vote. And then in the 5 or 6 months leading up to writing this article, how he had behaved after winning that and then being named president of the Amazon Labor Union. Right? So we were big fans. And let us start by saying we never wanted to write. Okay, so what my big thesis is, and I wrote this intro myself with some help from Care Bear. Over the past 2 years, Chris had become a lightning rod. He's become positioned by many as a representative of the entire labor movement. Have you seen that happen in the last year since then? And frankly, he may be in over his head at this point. And we wrote this again a year ago. Let us start by saying we never wanted to write this piece. It was our utmost hope that what is happening would not play out this way. However, we both warned against it early and have continuously pointed out the warning signs as a collective network since early April 2022, when JFK 8 in Staten Island voted to become the first Amazon warehouse in the country to unionize behind the newly formed Amazon Labor Union. Now, my thing is that the left and organized labor has never done well relying on individuals to carry a movement. They're too easy to tear down and too susceptible to co-option. I think that you mentioned something about that. Personalities are always a bad thing when it comes to organizing. We need to stick to issues. And when we start to put our hopes into people, that's when the media when they are ready to, will yank the rug out from underneath that person and simultaneously destroy your movement. So we talk about the big win and the open letter. This is a very, very long article. I'm going to warn you now. All right. We talk about, and this was from INN News right after the win. Reef wrote an open letter to Chris Smalls and read it on air, basically saying, don't sell out, listen to the workers, and don't go DNC route. The biggest red flag is the veneer of activity, but the lack of visible substance for the ALU since the win. All right. Very aligned with the Democratic Party in that vein. There also has not been one other facility that has voted to unionize organized by the ALU since. And they have made attempts to organize at ALB1 in Albany. They made attempts to organize at another facility in Staten Island, which I think we mentioned there. Right? Shadow Band Refugee was on Frank Analysis talking about the fact that the PRO Act would have eliminated ALU at that moment because ALU was not a certified union by AFL-CIO, but that AFL-CIO effectively, and that's what he had said, was that it would consolidate all the Amazon labor unions under the AFL-CIO. Somebody else had argued that that was not the case. I don't know whether that is the case or not. It doesn't matter because the PRO Act failed. In the end of all of this, the PRO Act ended up not passing in 2022 and still has not passed. So, also, a partisan union that is traditionally aligned with Democrats, further politicizing the union and potentially alienating Republican and nonpartisan workers. Right? We talked about a lot of this stuff. And look at that. The Teamsters 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, launched a Amazon division. And we had actually covered that on How Do We Miss That? They had been targeting Amazon for a while. We cover the speech in front of Congress, and how can he claim that it's not a left or right thing, but a worker thing, while simultaneously turning the labor issue into a partisan one when it must be nonpartisan to be successful? So here I am again saying that he's really aligning with Democrats and Democratic-friendly media over Republicans. Even in this speech, he's only really addressing Lindsey Graham, who had said something negative, but there's plenty of Democrats sitting in front of him, too, that he had an opportunity to speak to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's what happened with the White House visit. And first of all, the fact that people missed that he wasn't there to originally meet with Joe Biden, but to meet with the Labor Secretary and with Vice President Harris. But when the White House saw the kind of PR move that they could have made by bringing Biden into a room with all the labor leaders, he got upgraded and brought into the big conference table room. Right? What was he hoping to gain from that meeting? So we spent 2.5 hours going through this, and the AOU got played by the administration to make it look as if they were doing something to help labor. And we've seen repeatedly since then how much of a friend the Biden administration is to big labor. Like literally, we just talked about what happened with the UAW in the last segment, but also what they did to the Teamsters and what they did at UPS, what they did to the rail workers in December by preventing them from going on strike congressionally. All right, that Chris basically played and went along with that part. Meanwhile, this person, who I can't stand his nickname, but curious if anyone knows why he went, because it looks like Joe and Kamala were using him to say, see, the Dems are advocating for this when they're not. Right? So, and here's the photo op. And that's in Joe's video. Platitude salad chat. Right? All that matters is what goes on the nightly 6 and 11 o'clock news to the Democrats, which was the 3-second soundbite of Chris laughing, got me in good trouble, and the handshake. The narrative gets set by corporate media once they have their B-roll. That was it. That's the B-roll. You're done. You're now the labor mascot for the Democratic Party. It happened that fast.
Oh, Lord.
They used him for a photo op.
That's almost an oxymoron. You're now the labor mascot for the party that broke a rail strike.
Well,
fuck. This is
right?
Clown City.
But also,
oh my God.
Okay, it's getting them in trouble for supporting them. Well, with their real bosses, we know who are the corporations and the donors. They tell them themselves all the time. They can't even help it. So then we talk about the union busting efforts. This is one of my favorite all-time videos recorded on the internet by Chris Legion over at INN. And this is know what to expect when trying to start a union, the repercussions of organizing unions, and all the dirty tactics that companies are going to go to, both while you're trying to organize and even after you voted, while you're waiting to get your first contract. One of the best videos I've ever seen. It's actually one of the reasons why I invited Chris to be part of INN. I'm so glad that he's back on Twitter now, at Chris Legion with a K. Follow him. Hook up with him also on Substack. Great dude. Love him.
Yep.
On April 13th, Reef and I did a segment on How Did We Miss That, talking about some of their union busting tactics, literally hiring Pinkertons in Alabama. Right? And then, oh, yeah, they hired the Pinkertons. And then on May 10th,
I remember that.
On May 10th, another segment focused on the efforts. This is the other Staten Island facility, LDJ5, which also, by the way, spectacularly failed. Part of which they held a rally right before the vote for this. And who attended that rally? All right. This was an amazing speech that Tristan Lyon, who was organizing at LDJ5 and was fired. All right. He wrote this speech out. We read it on air, or, on the show that night. But that, wow. I mean, so it failed partially because the perception is Chris A. aligned with the Democrats. AOC and Bernie showed up at that rally is my point. And that he had spent the few weeks doing a media tour after the first win, that there wasn't enough infrastructure and ground game at LDJ5 to the level that there was at JFK 8. So it was a foregone conclusion that that was going to fail as a vote. And it failed, I believe, by a 2-1 margin. It wasn't even close. All right. INA members further pointed out some red...
Foregone.
I love foregone. All right, here's the celebrity and union drip. And this isn't so much my criticism. I do certainly think that he is in love with the publicity and the popularity that he has, and I think a lot of people would be. They covered, is he a Gucci socialist? That was an article that somebody had written, and Reef and Colin read that. And then they talked about showing up with Zendaya and showing up the top 100 influential people for Time Magazine in New York City. That was in June of 2022. Jesse points something out. Jesse Jett, our esteemed colleague and my co-host for American Tradition, which we ran last night, episode 28, amazing show. Check out American Tradition on INN if you haven't.
He's the network bard. That's
oh my God.
The way I will say. I'll refer to Jesse that way. He's our bard.
He's a genius. Yep. So he says, even indoors, the sunglasses became part of his look. It feels like just this wall of insincerity. When you're trying to talk to working class people and reach through to us, hard for me to trust someone if I can't see their eyes. I think it speaks a lot to someone being made a face of the movement, because once you turn everyone's focus to that person and their own life and their own issues, then if you have them fail, then so does the movement. So I said that earlier. I didn't realize that I was literally quoting Jesse, but I'm not surprised. But we talked about this last year on American Tradition. So now Chris is rarely seen without wearing his sunglasses, and we wonder, is this a bad look for the face of labor in USA that won't let you see into his eyes, which is the windows to the soul? So Jesse wrote Union Drip and performed it live on American Tradition. This was episode 9. Like I said, we just recorded episode 28.
So good.
On May 25th of this year, we recorded a new version of Union Drip that he did. That was on episode 24, and I think I shared that around today. But here's my biggest contention. Where is the PR arm at ALU? All right. Where is the marketing machine? Why can't news shows like INN News or How Do We Miss That be able to easily book ALU leaders and representatives? We're going to talk about, and I go into the details. It cannot fall on Chris or Vice President at the time, Derek Palmer. That's a whole other mess. Derek Palmer, I thought he resigned from the union as Vice President because there were domestic violence charges potentially leveled against him that he pled guilty to in May of 2022. That came out in March or April of this year. But Derek Palmer, they can't possibly understand the media landscape, the complexities of it, and book their own media appearances, and they can't rely on consultants within the Democratic Party and corporate media links, because how do you think they're going to position him? So when How Do We Miss That covered the story about the successful Brookline, Massachusetts teacher strike, one of the highlights from the organizers was a large number of people involved in the constant one-to-one communication that was happening among the workers. Each leader was responsible for just 5 workers. You've got thousands at that facility. So imagine that you had a leadership structure that had 1,500 people because each one could only speak to 5 workers if there were 7,500 there. That's what they were talking about. Now, something manageable, not overwhelming. You build rapport, credibility, and trust with your fellow workers. But since Chris now became the figurehead, who are the people behind the scenes? Are they connected with the Teamsters, AFL-CIO, DSA? We asked this last September. Are they building an in-house team? They need, and this is my number one contention, I've been screaming this for a year and they still haven't done it. They need in-house public relations, graphic designers, web design, photo editors, programmers, and coders. They need independent media experts from within the warehouses who view media from a worker's benefit perspective first and foremost. Man, this makes me so fucking angry. They haven't done anything of this in a year. I laid this out. I sent it to Chris. I sent it to their legal team. We've shared this around all over the place. Nobody wants to touch it. Why?
Same reason for most of it, really. Lack of seriousness and obsession with aesthetics. Always
Expanding the reach of the
same
union,
formula.
right?
Across
So,
the board.
I mean, expanding the reach of the union to include booking appearances on shows that are unpopular with the Democratic elites may appeal to a large percentage of the warehouse employees. Going on Fox is still acceptable today because it's speaking directly through the controlled corporate media, pushing duopoly narratives and maintaining the status quo. It appears from the outside there are not enough people and or enough money to make this happen yet. And it takes many hands to do this work. Better yet, why should they do any corporate media appearances which aren't 100% on their terms? Shouldn't they be looking to build their own channels, develop their own talent on a self-hosted platform which speaks directly to the coworkers without any corporate spin or interference? Conditions in the warehouses and for the drivers are atrocious. Why not daily press conferences? Man, this makes me angry to read again. Because so little of it has been done. All right, the fact that they're silent when workers are dying on the job. This happened earlier this year twice, where we reported and INN, Colin tagged ALU in something saying, hey, you know, a worker died at this facility. You have anything to say about it? And then like hours later, oh shit, we should probably put out a statement. Sure enough, you see an official statement put out by ALU. Twice Colin scooped them on this in the last year. They don't have a PR arm that they really need one desperately.
Or they don't feel it's needed. Sorry to take the most like the most cynical approach, but
right.
I
So
always just ask who benefits.
you know, again, here we talk about how badly Amazon's treating its workers dating back pre-pandemic and the amount of OSHA calls that have been going to their facilities and the fact that they keep an ambulance on site rather than calling the hospital every time an employee drops. Yeah, that's true. It's been well documented for years that bathroom time for employees is and has been an issue. Right, that's from Faz Shakir, who was Bernie Sanders' campaign manager. He is the leader now of More Perfect Union, who we've covered before. This is a 1.5-minute video talking about peeing in bottles, and we have over 1 million incredible employees around the world and have great wages in healthcare from day one. Right, that's Amazon trying to gaslight, but that's crap. So, yeah, there's the undercover author. So we have that from 2018. Warning signs of Democrats trying to co-opt the union. Please, again, go through this. There's so much there. And if anybody decides that they want to defend Chris Smalls and ALU, send them this, please. Send them this.
Yep. 100%.
All right, because there's a lot of questions. Hot labor summer. What do you mean? What? That hashtag? That alone was a DSA / Democratic Party invention. Ilhan Omar, and it's all Democratic Party aligned. They're the only ones that ever used that phrase, hot labor summer. And Chris himself adopted it.
Okay, but to be fair, they mean hot labor summers, and they're hot because they can't afford to pay for air conditioning. So
Right. It is kind of a really bad misnomer. AFT featured Chris at their annual conference, and we know how badly the AFT is an arm of the Democratic Party. Randy Weingarten, awful leader. Sorry. Not a good union leader, in my opinion. Now, here's the other thing that Chris had said on Breaking Points, I believe, that they lost a vote at a facility, but that Chris claimed that more than 100 facilities have reached out about unionizing. Okay, but I've heard of like 4, and 3 of them failed. The fourth one is at ONT8 out in California. They are currently having a vote right now, I believe. But here you go, almost 8 weeks later. And what we did was we tried to email Chris and ALU and invite them to come on. Either How Did We Miss That, or do some kind of a private, a separate interview. We want to talk to the people at the 100 other facilities whom have contacted Chris, right? I know Sabby Sabs does too. We understand how busy you are. Trying to be respectful and nice. Right? Almost 8 weeks later, he went to California, and he responds to Colin, and he claps back on Twitter. In response to his photo op with Zendaya, as well as our network efforts to reach out to him, his answer is, tweet less, organize more. Stay tuned. It's a hot Libra summer. He's so fucking condescending. And the sad thing is, he lives less than a half hour from me. We could go and sit down and talk this shit out.
This is like AOC vibes already.
Yes, very much so. This is organizing. What's the long game?
This whole sorry, sweaty energy.
Right. Well, she is a union member. She's also hot as anything. I mean, she's Zendaya. I mean, I get it. I get it. Although he's married with twins, young twin daughters, by the way. But man, Zendaya, that's hard to pass up. I get it. But Colin clapping right back. I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher advocate for Empower Ed. You know that. Now, in the last year, Colin has actually showed up and showed up for Pashan Brown, who was an Amazon worker in the Baltimore area that died during COVID after administering COVID tests to employees without any protection whatsoever or any training for that matter. Right? So here's Colin saying that we reached out to talk about your organization and you didn't respond. Well, I'm busy, so schedule through my assistant, Zara. So we did.
Oh my God.
Okay, July 7th. She replies 4 days later. I replied the next day. She replies that Chris isn't available then. Is Derek available? I also sent this to Derek at one point. I got Derek's cell phone number. I tried texting him. I haven't heard back from Derek. All right. Now, again, from July 7th to July 26th, we've still been unable to book anything. Yeah. I then give we genuinely want to get an update on the efforts the union wants to share, for them to share. We want to ask Chris and Derek how we can help amplify the daily struggle of the warehouse workers. We want to love to learn more about the challenge of organizing individual warehouses collectively in the face of union busting Amazon. We definitely want to do a way more in-depth look beyond the mainstream 2-minute glazed over vignettes we see on local corporate network media. And we also want to give the microphone to the people doing the work in the warehouses and driving the delivery trucks and vans. Totally a reason you would not want to schedule something like that, right?
Fuck.
You didn't know how bad this was. All right? We laid out what we want to do for them, and we basically said we will be part of your PR arm and speak for the workers and tell them how bad Amazon is treating them. Here, then.
It's almost like they saw this and they're like, yeah, but like you're not completely kind of controlled. And so
yeah, we can't. Messy. Exactly. So then I reached out to Angie if she can do it. Oh, and then Derek. Oh, great. Derek's able to do it. She messages me on the 27th, but nobody was available on the 28th. Okay. We had already prepped a show for tonight. Some of our people who wanted to join are also unavailable, but let's schedule it for some other Wednesday at 9. Is an hour okay? We got a lot of questions. We want it to be a learning session for us about what's happening now and how we and everyone else can support. We want it to be positive, conversational, and engaging. What do you think? That is awesome. And that's the last time we heard from ALU. We then spent the next 4 weeks trying to identify a date, time, offering flexibility. However, there seems to be little to no interest from the ALU in making time to speak with the members of our admittedly tiny media outlet, showcasing their stories or educating the public on how they can help. Derek is CC'd in every email. Zara says she talked to him about this, but as VP of the union, he didn't even acknowledge this 2-week chain of emails. Why not? Actually, it was 4 weeks from July 7th through the end of July. 3 weeks. Then on August 13th, I got frustrated. I called out Chris in a tweet after he responded to Lucy on Twitter while publicly ignoring me and other INN members, right? And this tweet, of course, went unresponded to by Chris. We've been trying to interview anyone at ALU for months. Who else handles media appearances and bookings for union representatives besides you, Derek, and Angela? We'd like to speak to the head of PR for the Amazon Labor Union about interviews on INN. No response. Then you have this cat, Matt, who we interviewed, and Matt we had a whole story with Matt, and shout out to Matt if you're watching. Hi, Matt. Matt got fired and retaliated against. He was originally told by Chris Smalls that Chris was going to help him organize his facility, which was one of the oldest Amazon pick warehouses in the country, one of the original ones. I think it's like the second warehouse there was. You could see that he sang praises for Heather Goodall, who I've connected with on TikTok. If you follow ALU Heather on TikTok, she really is a union. She's a leader of workers. And she posts videos on TikTok every day about the stuff that they're going through, how difficult it is on her hands. She's more of a PR arm for ALU than anyone at ALU has ever been. They should have hired her. Right? And then Colin was talking about Hood Dreams. I don't really want to, again, get into that. That was more Colin's thing. We certainly talked about the fact that he kept saying, fuck Jeff Bezos, and organizing in front of Jeff Bezos' house. And again, this was brought about by Colin, who has been a big student of Kwame Ture. And what Kwame Ture was talking about is that you can't organize around a negative message. All right. Now, my feeling is that they don't need to be friendly, but they don't need to run around screaming, fuck Jeff Bezos, billionaires, they got to go. It's going to be seen and perceived to the rest of the outside world as unserious, thuggish, and plays into racist stereotypes. And it's also the person who founded the company they all work for, who does provide them with a job. So it's like, you got to walk a balance there. But our biggest thing is that it does nothing to address the systemic issues. There will always be another Jeff Bezos. Right?
Yep.
So there was
That's
also
always my beef with people who are like, we need to get rid of this group of people and then society is going to be great. And it's like, okay, but if you don't do something about the system that created them, you're just going to be playing whack-a-mole forever. Because if you get rid of these people over here, then new people are just going to spring up because it's the same system that's creating these things. You have to address the system. Otherwise, it's just going to keep, like Carlin said, garbage in, garbage out.
Every time. So, again, he's mentioned in several interviews, including one with very famously Hassan Piker. He's calling for a general strike in 2024. Haven't heard him talk about that in quite a while, by the way. But when he did go on Hassan Piker's show in last summer, when he was on his California tour, he was very much about, we're going to organize general strike 2024. Nothing's been said about that. Now, maybe they're organizing and they're doing something about that, but they're certainly not being public about it if they are. What's the plan to build a strike or mutual aid fund so that worker threats to walk out actually have teeth? What's his plan to educate people on the need for strike and mutual aid funding and execute this idea so people can be prepared and join and plan accordingly? I'm asking some hard questions here, but they're like basic table stakes questions. Why wait for a general strike 2 years from now? It's interesting that he wants to push for it during the 2024 presidential election campaign season. Remember, this was during 2022. Nobody had announced that they were running for president yet, except for Donald Trump. Oh, no, actually, he hadn't even announced. He announced in November of last year that he was going to be running, because I was in Florida on a business trip, and I remember that very well. But setting up mutual aid fund and strike funds take time. There are plenty of Amazon workers who've been fired who are now setting up GoFundMes or requesting financial assistance online to sustain their living costs. Where's the urgency of meeting the needs of Amazon workers right now? And why has Chris not highlighted this issue at all as part of his organizing? Right, that was in Times Square on Labor Day last year.
Last question, General Strike 2024, what's going on?
I'm calling for it. As a union president, I'm taking a stance, and I think that we all should do it.
Are you guys going to get ready over the next couple years?
We're going to get ready now.
That's not me saying that. That's Chris saying that.
Yeah.
September 9th, 2022. That was more than a year ago. What have we done to get ready for General Strike 2024? Our thing was that his ask was never big enough. Where are the demands? Right? At INN, we constantly ask the question if the ask regarding policy that forces systematic, radical change for the working class is big enough. Time and time again, the Democratic Party are notorious for starting at the compromise position of policy in the guise of appealing to their Republican and centrist Democratic colleagues in the name of bipartisanship, which always ends up becoming a crumb that the working classes has to unwillingly accept as the best the Democratic Party can do. We've been told by quote-unquote progressive leaders like AOC and others, that's shout out to Kit, AOC, I can't stand when he sings that, but now he's got it in my head, right? Others that the working class need to organize in order to push politicians to do the right thing for their constituents, but we never hear or learn what organizing actually entails. And then but we didn't mean against us. But this is where we bring Kwame Ture into it. Again, is that he spoke on the confusion that people have with differences between organization and mobilization. Mobilization's easier and centered around one issue, all right, like unionizing Amazon, and usually leads to reform and specific actions like rallies. Mobilization is a way of putting pressure on the establishment to do right by the working class. Organization, on the other hand, deals with revolutionary or radical change of the system of power as a long-term strategy that includes political research, tactical planning, and people being unified in thought. We don't want the establishment to just do right by the working class. We as the working class want to take power away from them. Empowering the working class with the means to be independent by taking away power from corporations should always be the big ask that we shoot for. And as Ture eloquently stated, when you want power, you organize, because you don't want to put influence. You want to seize power for yourself, and you do for yourself what you're putting pressure for the others to do for you. He summed up the differences, by saying mobilization is temporary, organization is permanent and eternal. I don't remember how long this is.
Becoming conscious is linked to mobilization and organization, something we mentioned last year. We must make clear distinctions between mobilizers and organizers. To be an organizer, you must be a mobilizer. But being a mobilizer doesn't make you an organizer. Much confusion is to be found here. Malcolm X was a great mobilizer. He was a great organizer. Martin Luther King was a great mobilizer. He was not a great organizer. These facts can be easily seen from King and Malcolm. When Malcolm went to a place, he left a mosque. When King went to demonstrations, he broke down desegregation and he moved on. As a matter of fact, King was not concerned with organization to the point that even though he was the most popular Baptist preacher in America, without the shadow of a doubt, and probably beyond the shadow of a doubt the most loved, he could not become president of the National Baptist Convention. Yeah, so many of them. The National Baptist Convention. As a matter of fact, if my memory serves me correctly now, and I remember it was Muhammad Speaks that carried the article on the front page in 1964 when King tried to become president of the National Baptist Convention. There was so much confusion there that a minister was actually pushed off the stage and died in the struggle. Yeah. And of course, King lost. The man who won was a reactionary man by the name of Jackson. He never did nothing for the people, never cared about the people, just was a pork chop minister who used their money to put gas in his big Cadillac.
Pork chop minister.
But he was organized.
I like that.
But he was organized. We say that we must come to know the difference between mobilization and organization because the enemy will use mobilization to demobilize us. Mobilization is very easy. Very, very easy.
Yep.
Because since we're people,
and now apply that moving forward, people.
Respond against acts of injustice.
It'll click, I
Anytime
promise.
there's one little act of injustice, we can blow it up, and we'll find people who come and make some mass demonstration around it. Miss Sally lost her job. Let's rally. She will get her job back. People will come and rally. So-and-so got kicked out of school because the teacher's unjust. The people will come and rally. They will come to rally at issues. And this is what mobilization does. It mobilizes people around issues. Those of us who are revolutionary are not concerned with issues. We're concerned with the system. The difference must be properly understood. The difference must be properly understood. Mobilization usually leads for reform action. not a revolutionary action. If we would look scientifically at the October 16th million and more march, we would see clearly that this was a mobilized event, not an organized event. We must know clearly the difference.
You also, and I would also want to say, Reef also mentions that unions are reformist in nature and not looking to change the system. So we've got, this is also, unity is not what we're against, but unity is what we're for. Yeah, this is true.
We have unity of action. We lack unity of thought. But our unity of action, I mean, it shocks us. In 1965,
he's so good.
the African...
Watch these videos, man. I'm telling you. So we believe that the unionization at Amazon is merely the compromise of empowering workers, as the higher-ups at Amazon will still have power and influence to negotiate certain rights with workers at the bargaining table. The true goal, in our opinion, should be that Amazon workers own the means of production, where every employee is a shareholder with personal stake within the company. We wish that Chris would demand for worker co-ops as the big ask that would bring true radical change at Amazon versus pushing for unionization that he described as his long game. But even now, where or what are the demands from Chris and the ALU regarding unionization? What direct action is Chris willing to lead beyond a march to Bezos's penthouse or Howard Schultz's home in New York City over Labor Day? Because once again, that's mobilization. All right. What can they do that acts as a catalyst for radical change at Amazon in the name of its workers? And this was their...
Fuck, man. Can you imagine if Amazon became a workers' co-op? That might just be game over right there. God damn.
They're a $1 trillion company. You got to figure out a way to
target there.
You got to figure out a way to crush the shareholders. And I don't know how you do that with the kind of power that they've got financially now. But my thing was, and here's how I close it out, which is, what is the ALU beyond Chris Smalls? And it is certainly the members, but Chris can't be everything. And it's unfair to expect him to be CEO and head of PR and marketing for the union. The ALU needs to continue to expose Amazon's unfair and monstrous practices toward their workers. Bad practice toward management enforcing bathroom policies, for example, that they would never agree to themselves. Spotlighting the number of deaths, injuries, workers' comp cases, the temperatures inside the warehouses on hot days, the illegal management, anti-union meetings, and supporting direct organizing at all the facilities nationwide. Why? So I did want to, we'll close out by playing this video by Joe. And this was Wake Up Chris. I'm pretty sure that this was the right one. I don't know if I have the titles on the wrong one or not. This is right.
Yeah! Biden, our friend
Careful,
Joe, our
don't
good
hug
friend
people.
Joe.
Wait a minute. Okay. No, this is actually that the ALU gets DNC'd and showing all the different ways that he's getting co-opted by the union. That's what this one is. So by unions. Watch this.
Seriously? What the fuck? Biden, our friend Joe, our good friend Joe. You are such a fucking asshole who doesn't care about the people that you fucking represent.
You know, it wasn't until we were victorious that we got any type of support. So to have it now, you know, visiting the White House, having a comrade in Bernie Sanders.
Seriously? What the fuck?
You got no friends in Washington, D.C. Your enemy is laughing at you. Wake up, asshole!
I didn't go in there to just do a photo op. I definitely had some demands that they didn't play. And, wow. You know.
And the whole thing about going to meet him because you think it's going to elevate the situation. No, not even the fact that the co-option that can take place that we've seen from almost every single leftist outlet out there that eventually gets swallowed up by the establishment. Biden was the architect for the conditions that created the fact that you are fighting like the Dickens that we are all living in right now.
Realize that it's not a left or right thing. It's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. It's a workers thing.
Just because you say this isn't about Republican or Democrat doesn't mean it's so if the actions don't back it up.
God, I love that moment, especially with Senator Graham kind of like looking down and shit. You know he was embarrassed.
First of all, I want to address Mr. Graham. First off, you know, it sounded like you was talking about more of the companies and the businesses in your speech, but you forgot that the people are the ones who make these companies operate. And I think that it's in your best interest to realize that it's not a left or right thing. It's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. It's a workers thing.
Just like hearing Lindsey Graham's name, I get like, I can feel my heart rate go up. Like the anger start to like, build inside me.
I definitely went off script. I had to hold it in.
Yeah.
The notion that people in the united in this democracy will outmatch tyranny is the oldest American ideal.
The reason why we're an independent union is because we don't want to get tied to politics, because we're representing 8,300 members that we know are going to have different political views. I've been on tour across the country. It's been like a real hot labor summer.
I see you watching me, brother. You know I was coming. You ain't gonna stop me. You told me on April 2nd, right? That I wasn't smart or articulate. But guess what? Look what I did. Look what I did.
If tonight, after I leave here, the local Klan rides up on the campus, puts up some racist signs, slaps a couple of sisters, brothers around, tomorrow morning, every African out here be out here. Even the Uncle Toms. Let's get down. We got to do something. And I promise you, for 3 or 4 days, you'll be very hot.
It's been like a real hot labor summer.
There'll be no peace on this campus for 3 or 4 days. White students even be afraid of you. And after 3 or 4 days, you will sit down. And you'll forget about it.
Fuck Jeff Bezos. Fuck Jeff Bezos. Billionaires, they gotta go. Billionaires, they gotta go. Fuck Jeff Bezos. Fuck Jeff Bezos.
Just because everybody's against the same thing doesn't mean everybody's for the same thing.
Fuck Jeff Bezos. 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 Fuck Jeff Bezos.
Unity doesn't represent what you're against. It represents what you are for.
Now I hear like he is in talks of writing a memoir.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. And a friend of the show, Franco, I think also reached out recently.
Friend of the show, Sabby, too.
Sabby is also trying to reach out. I just feel like we want sit rep, man. Like, where's the actual work happening? What's actually happening?
What's the plan, and how can we help? And how can we help organize and get the word out and spread the stories of what's happening in the warehouses and hold meetings offline for workers? We want to help. We have a voice. We know how to run streams. We know technology. We know marketing. We know social media. We have skills that we can lend to this. And we're offering, and we're kind of screaming here that we want to help.
Of course, they try to demonize my character. You know, they saying that the union dude is going to go towards my Lamborghini. But they don't know me. I'm more of a BMW guy. But there you go. It wasn't even enough for me to even come to the table.
Pinky ring, we're about to hit you. Two-tone my Lambo, that's drippy. But I left the butt on that she tips.
Shout out to Joe, man. Oh, man, that video is so on point in so many ways. It really just summarizes. It summarizes a lot of what we talked about tonight. It really does a good job to kind of encapsulate a lot of this stuff. The other video that's at the top of the article is just as good, if not better, honestly. There we're talking about his evolution over time and how he's hanging out with old Democrats and celebrity and what's going on there. But man, I'm still hopeful that something can happen nationally for Amazon workers, but I can tell you it's probably not going to happen through Amazon Labor Union. They've been fighting just to maintain the vote at the one facility they have already and to get a first union contract. The minute that happens, maybe they're off to the races and they start signing other warehouses to their union. They are helping the Kentucky, some of the warehouse workers in Kentucky right now organize with the UFCW. They also, again, ONT8 in Ontario. We'll see what happens in California. Let's see what happens with their election. They've been organizing for over a year, and fingers crossed that they decide that they want to vote to unionize as well. You watched all that stuff. You heard me ramble for about the last half an hour. Himbo, what do you think of all this shit? Besides that, owning the means of production is the right thing, and then we'll head out for the night.
I got pretty much 2 main points to make. Number one, when it comes to the majority of events, when it comes to unions, I just want people to focus on like, okay, what's getting done? Because there's so much fucking talk and there's so much smoke and mirror when it comes to these sort of things. What's getting done? Focus on that. No matter what are we doing? How does this benefit workers? What is your plan? Because if we allow unions to get to the point where it's just like the squad, or up here the NDP, where it's just like platitudes and kind of demonstrations and empty gestures and all these, like, check out this video of us like sticking it to the man. You always got to ask yourself, like, okay, so what is the result of this going to accomplish? And if it's fucking nothing, then taking it as charitably as you can without being cynical, you can at least assume, okay, well, then we kind of need to try something else, because this isn't really producing tangible results. And when it comes to unions, that's all that should matter. Tangible results, right? We don't want people just yelling into the void, because yelling into the void, well, it may feel good. It's not going to improve your fucking life. Okay. So let's try and keep the focus on this. And just closing thought, less relevant, but if I didn't veer wildly off topic, I wouldn't be Snow Himbo now, would I? I just have some feedback for any manager types who might be listening, or for anybody really. If any of your workers complain about pay at any point, and your response to that is anything other than, okay, we're going to pay you more, I'm going to save you some time. Just as someone who's managed before, and as someone who's been on the other side also, just assume they're looking for another job. From the point of that conversation, if your answer isn't, I'm going to do this and it's going to happen, just prepare that they're going to find another job and you're going to fucking leave your ass.
Countdown clock.
Especially if you're like me. Yeah. Especially if you're like me and you literally got thank you for the feedback. Because I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry, Sweaty. It wasn't feedback. I said that because I want you to fucking do something about it. I don't want you to say, like, thanks so much. I hear you. I see you. I'm going to pass this along. We're really going to, like, think about it. Great. You can think about it all you like.
Tell to the next guy.
If this isn't dealt with, like, within this conversation, and I feel like more people should actually say this. Like, I know there's, like, it's a little scary. More people, we should normalize saying this to managers. Basically, instead of, like, making it like, oh, well, could you pretty please give me some more money? Instead of that, just be like, okay, well, the pay's not great. So just so you know, I'm probably going to start looking elsewhere. And if you want to keep me, it might be in your best interest to kind of, like, keep that in mind and think about, like, raising wages.
Because what's it going to cost to replace me? I mean, it's a threat.
Exactly.
But what's it going to cost to replace me? I mean, A, you've got dislocation costs. B, as far as talking to your customers or the people who you've got rapport with already, explaining to them that you're no longer there, going about the process of finding somebody else, paying a recruiter, sifting through all that stuff, dislocating your people's time to interview folks. It's a whole lot easier to just pay them a little bit more, and it costs you a lot less in the end. So yeah.
Because all of a sudden you've got to go through recruiting. You've got to train that person. Listen, right here at my job right now, it's like a revolving door, and I swear to God, like, everybody's drowning because they've got so much staff recruiting and then training and then, like, onboarding and then offboarding. Holy fuck, just pay someone like a couple bucks more an hour. Like, you're really doing this? You're dragging your heels for all of this extra effort?
Yep.
It's just, Jesus, it's fucking maddening, man.
All right, man. Well, we're hitting almost 2 hours. Tonight, I'm going to give you guys a little surprise. I edited down clips from American Tradition Tuesday night, and one of the things that I put up was Outsource, which is a new song by Jesse that he wrote last month. kind of in response to the Oliver Anthony thing, but more about coming up with, in the spirit of a Utah Phillips type of song. Where is it? Ian in background playing YouTube. So this should be it. And I'm going to, again, say to keep questioning everybody's motivations, everyone, and enjoy Jesse. And we'll be back next week, and have a good night, everybody. You?
Good night, everybody. And have a great week ahead. And remember, nobody wants to work anymore.
Nobody wants to work anymore. All right, now let's do this.
Because we don't. Except I just got a new job, so I'm lying. So whatever. I don't. Play it out!
Hopefully this works. I don't know what's about to happen here.
My granddad was a miner mighty long ago in Butte, spent his whole life scraping by, who never left his boots. Then someone bought his bosses out and he'd outlived his use. They let him go, they trimmed the wage and they hired someone new. And he learned that that's what job creators do. Now walking through the heart of town, I see my daddy's shop. Then he shut down when the superstore got put in down the block. And he didn't have a lot of choice to work there all the same. For half of what he made when he had something to his name. He told me that's just the way it is, that's business through and through. And he told me that's what job creators do. Well, I watched a lot of poverty start blooming in this town. And I seen too many families out sleeping on the ground. When I offered help, I got harassed by Sheriff Brown as he gripped that kind of grin that says I'd love to put you down. But if I owned a mine and I enslaved them for a crew, then he'd call me a job creator too. They'll tell you how 1,000 miles are hungry for your bread. And they'll say that to succeed you need to step on people's heads. Those suckers might be starving, but it's better them than you. They'll tell you that's what job creators do.
It's time to wake up. Come on, get up.
To the first union in American history. Yeah! To the first union in American history. Yeah! Words can't describe this feeling, though. We put in our blood, sweat, tears. That memo that came out, calling me not smart or articulate. Ironically, they also said to make me the face of the whole unionizing efforts, which I had no intention at the time.
That's the problem. You let an entire movement hinge on one person. It's time to wake up. Come on, get up.
When we reached out initially to David, he didn't want to do the show.
He did, yes.
So you're telling me you're a union leader. When the fuck do you see union leaders on mainstream media?
Never.
Do you think his fucking phone is ringing off the hook a month ago, 3 months ago, last fucking year?
Robert has a pretty big title. Sometimes he goes first. But we're starting with you, Christian. Thanks for being here today.
He's the lead Amazon protest organizer joining us from New Jersey there. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate your time.
Here in New York, in an historic victory for labor rights.
It's the man himself, Christian Smalls, president of the victorious Amazon Labor Union.
You must be taking special pleasure in this victory, right?
Well, I certainly am rooting for you. I mean, maybe if they throw some more woke slogans at you, you'll forget you can't feed your family.
Right.
Chris, I appreciate your coming on. Thank you very much.
The biggest victory in the modern American labor movement.
And it was a battle that was fought tooth and nail.
The union victory at Amazon warehouse in Staten Island is by far the biggest beat the odds David versus Goliath unionization win I've seen. And he covered labor for decades for the New York Times. That would make you the proverbial David How did you do it?
First union at Amazon. You went to war with Goliath. With Bezos.
This is not just David and Goliath. I mean, this is David and Goliath squared.
He really represents a modern day David and Goliath story that I think inspires a lot of people.
People are calling this a David versus Goliath type of story.
Goliath, Christian, was not actually technically a billionaire. Although he was large, he was in good fighting shape. But based on my knowledge of the story, well, such as it is.
And this is David versus Goliath, and I can tell you now, we all got to be David. We want to thank Jeff Bezos for going to space, because when he was up there, we were signing people up.
You thanked him for flying in his penis-shaped rocket.
So I just tell the truth, you know, and he need to know that. You know, he thanked us when he came back. You know, we paid for that trip. So, you know, in this case, we wanted to remind him that you keep going to space, we want to continue to unionize.
You are now a national figure in this new labor movement.
That's the problem. You let an entire movement hinge on one person, and they cut the fucking head off of your movement.
We have unity of action. We lack unity of thought. But our unity of action, I mean, it shocks us. In 1965, the African and whites revolted. I mean, revolted. They shocked America, shocked themselves. We did that.
What's your approach from here? To what degree do you think you can cooperate more with Amazon leadership, or to what degree do you think that's wise?
This is almost an open letter to Christian. If you're out there listening, if anyone sends this to you, right, you know, just keep in mind who has been supporting you.
It's time to wake up. Come on, get up.
Let's make sure he sees this and hears this. You know, don't sell out. Don't forget about the people behind you, the people who amplified you.
And now they're controlling the narrative on you, which they put AOC out and Bernie out.
She's doing an extraordinary job. Please welcome Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
So screw this ish. I am not voting for any of you fools in November.
We've got their back. We've got their back.
You should have never invited Bernie Sanders and AOC because it's not going to elevate it. You let them know, like, hey, you turned our back on us. You don't come with us. What kind of message do you think that would have sent to the other Congress people out there had you done that? Instead, you will open arms to these people. Oh, this ain't about Republican or Democrat, but let these progressives come on in. And now let's hype up the progressives. Just because you say this isn't about Republican or Democrat doesn't mean it's so if the actions don't back it up. And at the end of the day, what did we get?
What do you think every Republican gets to do now? They get to fight you, right? You appear as an adversary now to right-wingers. At Shut Down Amazon is now either co-opted or has explaining to do. In less than 1 month, he showed up to GQ, Teen Vogue, shaking at POTUS's hands.
I mean, for me, seeing the warm welcome from Joe Biden and stuff.
Good trouble, man. I like you. What's up? You're my kind of trouble. Congratulations, man.
Right now, it just looks like Biden and company are treating him like a puppy, basically, like a cute little puppy. Whereas, you know, Chris should be coming in like a pit bull in the sense of they should be fearful of him.
I got a little trouble by it. You may recall I was saying I'm looking forward to them being organized. Yeah, well, well, you got it done in one place. Yeah, let's not stop. That's right.
Just met the president. LOL. He said I got him in trouble.
Good. But
Okay, so
I
I
mean,
just
does he
want
really
you to take
believe
on
that
this,
shit?
fam.
Does he really believe that?
But, fam, what ended up happening is that Biden actually approved a huge federal contracts for Amazon anyway, to the point where Jacobin had to write about it.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man.
Seriously? What the fuck? You are such a fucking asshole who doesn't care about the people.
I mean, this whole thing stinks to high heavens. I mean, and I'm glad you got in there and you fought and you did something. But what do we get? What do we get? We haven't gotten anything yet. We don't know. Use your power correctly. And don't forget that this guy that you're going to shake his hands, he's the one who created all the conditions in which we're swimming in right now.
It's go time. Come on. Don't let your movement hinge on one person. It doesn't work. FDR did the same fucking thing. History lesson. Go read your fucking history books. What did FDR do? He took the socialists. He took the communists. He talked the talk. He gave them the New Deal. He gave them the federal jobs program. And then he cut the fucking heads off of their movement. And he absorbed their leaders. And he crushed their movements for 100 years. You got nothing since. Nothing. All the wealth going to the top 1%. And you got shit. Even during the pandemic, what did they give you? Fucking scraps, crumbs of $1,200. That's how much they respect you. And then Bernie Sanders is like, Joe Biden was a friend of mine.
Like, how do you not see those optics?
Wake up, asshole.
Who are these people? I came to be a prophet, but I'll settle for pariah. We filled the air with DDT and called the wind Mariah. We cheer on every victory in the war against Goliath. Watch them model Christian Smalls and pose him with Zendaya. They're gonna milk that union drip till the very last simp takes the very last sip. And when it's all wrung dry and it's not worth shit, then they'll leave it laying right where it is. You can watch them let it all drip into the ditch. Here's the sitch. Biden will invoke the witch of January 6 as a quick fix. Tell you that she's here to fill your bellies with some twigs and sticks, rocks, berries, and a capital brick. Concurrently, he's finger-wagging all of the Republicans while sucking their proverbial dicks. He'll fluff them up a couple of concessions in the flick of a bick. He just needs lights and a camera and prompter and someone to monitor that prompter who knows their shit. 'Cause Joe's gonna open up the show with a few short words to be chanted by old white folks wearing old white cloaks who will march in a circle around some progressive political star who is purely a place to spit. But it's all good fun, and there's no harm done when the banks yell, "Cut!" and they're calling it quits. It's all Flint water gone under the bridge, out of sight, out of mind, and dissolved in the mist. And Joe'll only need a flick of the wrist, and then the throat of the movement is slit. It'll sputter and gurgle and choke for a bit, bleed out in a viral clip. And as the last of its life force flows to the floor, he'll say, "That's my idea of a union drip." See, the eyes are a glimpse of the soul. So it says a whole lot if they aren't exposed. And your message is branding you stamped on your clothes. And the media storm is wherever you go. Then you go meet Joe. And you laugh at his quips. And you shake his hand with a nice firm grip. And you cry good trouble through the loafers on your lips. Too true, that's a union drip. Now, who knew that the victory gift for your unionization's a DNC script? And it's nice and precise, like a sniper who's trying to cripple you right where you live. The target they lead is your wallet. They seek to dismember your hands so you can't feed your family or pick up your kids. While they flatter themselves into orgasm, feigning respect for our unions, who wired our grids, who welded our ships, who died for our rights to not witness our children conscripted to 12-hour shifts in a mine from the time that they're 5, when they know damn well that the unions had thrived till they shattered its hip, showed up and handed out Pinkerton slips. And now it's as simple and status as symbol and making the star of the movement so bright that the movement itself is eclipsed. Now our mouths grow dusty and dry on the promise of union drips that trickle down out of a wealthy fist that is squeezing the heart of the working class hard as it can till it finally ruptures and splits, punctures a valve, and it laughs at the sound of the squish. The way that they laugh at the sight of us making a wage slave wish to a man on the cover of Vanity Fair saying, "Eat the rich." So this is for those who rely on commission or toil for tips, watching their bosses drink bottles of profit while all you get offered are jugs of their piss. If you seek out the soul of the movement or proof that the movement exists, try looking in the eyes of Chris. And when you find that you can't, then the answer is as simple as this. The movement is never one single face, and a drip is a leak to repair or replace. We won't eat the rich to suit expensive taste. We'll consume because survival's at stake. That's Union Drip.
Indie News Network, collaborative family of independent content creators. It's co-hosted normally by me, Indie. I'm founder and editor of Indie Left News and Indie Media Today. I got Reef Breland sitting next to me.
At Kennedy News.
Is Andrew Rivera on The Handsome Cynic?
Politics is survival.
My name is Jesse Jett.
It's American tradition.
What's up, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden.
I mostly make art for INN.
Big Man Crab Joe. Keep up those great videos.
Hey guys, it's Yeti. Coming at you.
Hello, my name is Lucy from Blue Moon Red Wine.
This is Chris Legion.
Keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Who are these people?